Welcome to Speaking with Elvis podcast, the podcast of communication and mindset. In this particular podcast, we are going to focus on how we can find our own voice so that people can listen to us whenever we speak. Now, last week we shared about the one thing that can transform and change your communication, and it was the matters of keeping to the essential whenever you converse, whenever you speak, whenever you share an idea, to keep it to the essential. I brought the idea of a 3 C's. That simply means you have to keep it clear, concise, and compelling. You see, oftentimes when we have the chance to share an idea, to present in front of people, or even have a conversation, sometimes we go around the bush. We go on and on and on, and end up by not saying really much. That's why it was important to keep it to the essential. And I mentioned about to make it short to reveal interest and long enough to cover the subject. That's how you got to view every approach in conversation, every approach in communication or in public speaking, to think about to making short enough to reveal interest, but long enough to cover the subject. That goes back to the idea of a 3 C's, which is keep it clear, keep it concise, and keep it compelling. That's the one thing that can change how you communicate. Just go to the point. Don't try to tell the whole story at first. Yeah, there would be a time for that, but not maybe when you just starting out to transform the way that you communicate. Keep it to the essential. Maintain that 3 C's. The first, which is clear, make it so clear. Second, make it concise, brief. Brevity is powerful when it comes to communication. And make it compelling so that it has powerful. It can draw people to it. It has excitement. It can entice people. And you keep it short enough to reveal interest and long enough to cover the subject. Now, in this episode, we are going to dive into finding your unique voice so that people can listen to you whenever you speak. You see, we are very different from each other. We are unique. Every single one of us is unique. So it's important to maintain our own unique path, our own unique lane when it comes to communication. That's what we're going to be trying to uncover in this episode. I want to take an analogy, a very simple analogy. If you want to make a particular recipe, a special recipe, you don't want to do a lot of trials and errors, right? You don't want to try so many times to discover the right formula. You can easily find a chef, somebody who's very special, a specialist in that particular recipe. You can find a chef, have a conversation with the chef, whether you pay him or not. You just learn about how to make that recipe. If you want to make like a particular sauce, right? This beautiful, it can be an Italian, sauce or something like that. You want to find an Italian chef who specializes in that particular sauce so that you can learn the recipe from him. That's how you can go straight to knowing how to make that particular sauce. This is the same with speaking as well. So now, when you find that chef, you learn the different ingredients and different process, how to make that particular sauce. Now, once you succeed, and the truth of the matter is simply that when you put the ingredient in the steps that the chef has shown you, definitely you will get to success quicker. And once you succeed in that recipe, what you do after that is you can add your own little bit of touch to it, right? You can maybe add a little bit of this ingredient, a little bit more, a little bit less. Or you can even add an additional ingredient. The idea is simply to find your own unique way to make that particular sauce. Yeah, you've learned already how to do it based on what the chef has instructed you. But now you can add a little bit of something. You add a little bit of maybe a condiment that is a little bit different from the chef. Or maybe you can, increase some type of component or ingredient to that recipe, or you can reduce some ingredient to it. That's how you find your own unique version of that particular recipe. So this is the same with communication. Communication, it's simply the same way. In order to find your unique voice, what you need to do at first, it's simply find somebody, a great communicator, a great public speaker, a good conversationalist that you admire. You observe them, you learn from them, you learn how they do it, you learn how they use their voice, maybe their posture, their movement, their gesture. You learn how they do it. Then when you learn how to do it, you try to model it, right? You try to do it exactly like them. You try to apply the same pattern of behavior that they do in order to become who they have become. You do that. Once you succeed in doing that, now you can add your little touch to it. You add your naturalness to it. That's how you become a great communicator faster, and you can find your unique voice. Finding your unique voice doesn't always mean that you have to try to find different ways to speak or trying to find different ways to communicate. No, it's simply about finding somebody that you admire the most. Somebody that when you see them, either on stage or in interview or in conversation, you admire the way they communicate. You find that person, then when you succeed in doing exactly like that person, now you can add your little touch to it because you are unique, right? There's something that is unique about you. Maybe the way that you use your voice, the way your intonation, the way that you articulate and things like that. So you just add to that. It's called to model and modify. Keep that in mind. You model and modify. That's how you find your unique voice so that people can listen to you. So this is what happened to me. When I first arrived in US, and some of you already know that when I first arrived in US, I didn't speak a word of English. Now, when I started to learn the language, I tried to sound like anybody else. I tried to sound like Americans to get rid of my accent. Yeah, because I thought at first, it was frustrating not to be understood. It was a difficult process for me. So whenever I would speak to somebody, whenever I would share an idea or even ask for a simple direction, people would not understand me, right? People would literally ask me to repeat that so many times that I was so frustrated by it. At first, I wanted to change how I sound. I wanted to sound like Americans, like having, not having an accent. But I realized, I even started taking some classes, to get rid of my accent. But I realized that no, I was becoming somebody else by trying to be somebody else. So you cannot sound like somebody else. No, everybody else is taken. You need to sound like you, but find your unique lane, find your unique voice, unique way of communicating. So I realized that I was trying to sound like this person or that person, and it wasn't me anymore. That's when I backed down. And the way that I approach that is simply trying to find the way that I can sound so that people can listen to me. Now, I didn't want to change my accent at that moment. What I needed to do, it's simply to learn how to articulate, to learn how to articulate. So you see, sometimes for those who do have accent, like me, those who are coming from a country that speaks a different language than the one that they are currently speaking, they usually think that their accent is the problem. No, I don't think that the accent is a problem, forcefully. No, the accent is not a problem because I still do have my accent. But the way that I speak now is quite different. I articulate clearly, articulate so that people can listen to me. So if you are listening to this episode and you are somebody with the accent, somebody who sometimes are not heard or understood simply because your accent kind of gets in the way, I have to say that it's not particularly the accent that is the problem. The problem is your articulation. So I started to articulate quite clearly. And articulating means I have to pronounce all the syllables in the world, not trying to be like Americans. Sometimes when you see Americans speak, they kind of round some of the vowels. They don't they jump over certain syllable. They would not say it at least out loud. Sometimes it's so quiet you barely hear it. So no, I don't want to sound like that. I want to be able to speak that. Anybody who actually even starting to learn the language, anybody who's been a seasoned uh, language speaker can understand me. That's how I started to articulate. And again, articulation simply means that you stop to pronounce all the syllable in the word in the crisp fashion. So I usually teach my students how to do that. There are so many exercises that you can do that, right? So one exercise is simply to exaggerate when you see things. Now, you do this in practice. I'm not saying that when you are in front of the people, you start to exaggerate your pronunciation. That would look and sound weird. So you want to do it in practice, in your living room, when you are by yourself, in your car, in your house. You exaggerate how you pronounce every word. And this is the exercise I often give it as a homework to my students, that when they go home, they start reading. And when they read out loud. Because the idea of reading out loud is first you hear the sound of your voice. If it doesn't sound as you have heard it before, then you can self-correct. That's how you can start to articulate clearly. And another way to articulate is there are some exercises. It's called tongue twisters exercise. So there are certain particular word like she sell seashells by the seashore. She sells seashells by the seashore. You repeat that so many times and progressively faster, then you would see that you will start to formulate, you will start to use a different mouth muscle to pronounce all of this word. And the more you do it, the better you become. And at one point, it will become so natural that you would not have to exaggerate it anymore. So that's how you can start to articulate, you should start to pronounce all syllables in the word to find that unique voice. I'm talking to those who actually non-native, non-native English speakers or not native of the language that they are currently speaking, and they try to be very much understood whenever they share their idea. So for me, I found my unique voice, my unique way of speaking. People could hear me from afar and perk the ears because my way of speaking, my way of articulating is different from a lot of people. I don't want to sound like American. Why would I sound like American? By keeping my accent, I'm bringing a global perspective. I'm bringing a cultural perspective in my communication, in the way that I communicate, in the way that I speak. So that's how I keep my lane when it comes to finding my unique voice. That's how I keep my path when it comes to finding my unique voice. You don't have to sound like anybody else. You don't have to sound like a Joy or Jane. No, you would not really sound authentic if you want to sound like somebody who's already taken, right? So by keeping that authenticity is maintaining who you are. And again, if you speak with accent, you only need to articulate a little bit clearly to be able to find that unique voice. So that's how you can sound so people can listen to you. And when you find that voice, of course, you learn some of the techniques of how you use your voice. And I teach that often, that there are different ways that you actually become magnetic when it comes to being a great conversationalist or maybe great communicator or even a great public speaker, is not only finding your own name, your own voice, your own unique way of speaking, but then learning the techniques of great communication. And I think we will dive in a little bit deeper in other episodes, but I want to share that quickly now, that some of the technique is simply like you know how to vary your voice, you know how to internet, you know how to enunciate. All of these contribute to making your voice so unique and so powerful so that people can listen. That's how you find your voice. So keep in mind, I want to go back and say that the way you speak It's unique to you. You have to find your unique voice. I've seen a lot of the time I've seen a lot of people who want to sound like anybody else. And I have to say this, you can model somebody, but without being that person, you can model them and modify later. I remember even when I began speaking, my model was actually Martin Luther King. At one point, I wanted to sound like Martin Luther King. I just love the way that he delivered his speeches, the way that he sounded. I wanted to model him, and I have modeled him to some extent. And I've modeled so many other people. It wasn't just Martin Luther King. There are many people I have modeled. People like Les Brown. I've modeled people like even Ed Milet, which is one of my mentors, even Vosi Timbakwaya, who's an African global, he's originally from Africa, but he's a global international speaker and business an entrepreneur. So I modeled these people, but then I modified them to be me. So which means when I sound, you would not hear Vusi Timbakwaya in the way that I sound. You would not hear Les Brown in the way that I sound. You would not hear Martin Luther King Jr. in the way that I sound. But yet I have modeled all these people in the past. I have learn how to sound like them. And once I mastered to sound like them, now I added my little touch to the way that I sound to be able to be Elvis today, to be able to be the way that I sound today. So that's how you have to think about it. You have to look at it. You model, then modify. You model, then modify to find that unique path for yours, that unique voice of yours, that whenever you speak, your voice is so unique and has some quality to it that people can listen to you. That was it for the episode of today. So next week we will share more in communication or maybe even in mindset, because this podcast is about how to become a better communicator or better public speaker or better conversationalist, and also sharing some of the idea that can help with your mindset, with the way that you see things, the way you look at things, your perspective in life, even learning about resilience in life, learning about how you can transform your life, from the point of view of communication, from the point of view of your mindset. So with that, thank you so much for listening to this episode, and I will see you on the next episode. Thank you for tuning in with Speaking with Elvis podcast. Thank you.